And it says, because if you're small, nobody cares. If you're staff, nobody cares. I was small and I was hurting, and this wasn't about me. It wasn't. But I was alone, so alone, and I just wanted someone to see me. Is that this author knows how to end her chapters on cliffhangers, because the first 2 chapters ended on the worst cliffhangers that just made you want to read the next chapter right away. Hi, I'm Ashley, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to the start of another reading vlog. So in this video, I'm going to be reading 3 fantasy romance books that I'm super excited for. And 2 of those are ones I've been wanting to read since I posted my June releases video, and the other one is just one that I've been wanting to read for a really long time. And so the first book is Illusion of Stars by Sarah Marie Page. And this one is an enemies to lovers that's said to have the enemies to lovers tension of the Bridge Kingdom and the snarky banner of A Dawn of Onyx. And I've read the Bridge Kingdom and I really enjoyed those books. And I haven't read the Dawn of Onyx yet, but it is one that I've heard a lot about and been wanting to read. And then the second book is The Treasured One by Hannah Levin. And this one is more of a mentor to friends to lovers. And this one has fae in it. And our main character is a human, but she has special abilities, and she ends up going to the Fae world to learn more about her abilities. And so this one sounds like it's going to be super cute and cozy. And then the third book I plan on reading is actually one that I'm going to listen to on audiobook, because at the time of starting this video, I am off from work this week, and so I want to listen to an audiobook so that I can go on walks and get some exercise in, because when I'm at work, I get like a lot of exercise at my job, but obviously I'm home this week, so I don't have that, but I still want to get some exercise. So I thought an audiobook would be the perfect motivation. But The Treasured One and Illusion of Stars doesn't have an audiobook, so I was like trying to find another fantasy romance. And so I decided on A Dawn of Onyx by Kate Golden. So that one I will be listening to on audiobook, and if I happen to finish physically reading the other 2 before I finish listening to A Dawn of Onyx on audiobook, then I might also pick up the physical book as well. But we'll see. And I'm going to start with Illusion of Stars, so I am going to go start that, and I will be back with my first thoughts when I've read some of that. Okay, so what just happened? It's spoiled in the book synopsis on the back of the book. I knew it was coming, but it still hurt, and it still kind of caught me by surprise. We are only like 14% into the book, so it makes sense to happen now, because the rest of the book depends on this thing happening for the rest of the book to happen and for the romance to happen. But I just... still caught me off guard. Like, literally, like, my eyes are, like, watering from that. Oh my gosh, that was really cool. So, chapter 7, how this is done is, like, really neat. So, it starts off with, I didn't, crossed out. And then I go to the next page, and it's chapter 7 again, but this time it says it wasn't crossed out. And then you go to the next page, and then it's chapter 7 again, and it just says, how do you put pain on a page? How do you say goodbye? And then it's chapter 8. And that just, like, that reminds me a little bit of Twilight and New Moon, where the months are just going by. Now I have to look it up. Yeah, so it kind of reminds me of New Moon after Edward left Bella, and it's just, like, October, November, December, January, and then chapter 4. Hi, so it's now Wednesday, August 14th, and I have a reading update on Illusion of Stars. So I have made it to chapter 19, page 148, and I'm 30% through according to my Kindle. So let me tell you a little bit about what this story is about, and then we'll talk about my first thoughts. So our main character is 18-year-old Isabel, and she lives on a small independent island that is ruled by a queen and king. And Isabel is one of 2 apprentices to the royal physician, and her and the other apprentice are in a competition of sorts because only one of them will end up being chosen as a royal physician. It seems like the other physician is favored over Isabel, but Isabel refuses to give up hope. And currently at the start of the story, the royal physician is away, and while he is away, it's Isabel's duty to take care of the slowly dying queen, and it's the other apprentice's duty to take care of the king, who is suffering from an unknown mental illness, which makes him act crazy. However, one day, visitors from the neighboring kingdom of Bulgard show up seeking an audience with the king. And this is a big deal because up to this point, the kingdom of Bulgard has wanted nothing to do with Isabel's homelands. But now they're interested in Isabel's homeland because they're at war with the kingdom of Larlin, and Isabel's kingdom used to be a part of that kingdom, but now they're independent, so they are right next door to the kingdom of Larlin. So the kingdom of Bulgarth wants to use the location of Isabel's homeland to their advantage. And on this first day, they end up getting nowhere with negotiations because the king ends up having one of his episodes. So the people from Bulgard end up staying in the castle. And while the people from Bulgard are visiting, Isabel's friend ends up dead on the beach. And Isabel, of course, is devastated, and she wants to know what happened to him, and she has her suspicions, but because her friend is no one important and was just an apprentice postmaster, no one is going to look into his death. But Isabel thinks that the people from Bulgard killed him because she thinks that her friend learned something that he shouldn't have. Of course, she has no way to prove this. However, soon after this, Bulgard and Isabel's kingdom do come to an agreement that Bulgard can use their land. And really, Isabel's kingdom doesn't really have a choice because their option was for them to voluntarily let Bulgard use their land, or Bulgard would take their land by force. So they decide to go with the first option, and the general of the Bulgard army wants his second in command, his son Eric, to scout the lands of the island, and Isabel is sent with him to be a guide. However, she also has a secret task, and that secret task is to figure out exactly what this earth-shattering weapon is that the people of Bulgard have and to steal it. Isabel believes that by doing this, she'll be able to give meaning to her friend's death. And so our story goes from there. And now for my thoughts. So I am really enjoying it so far. Even though I'm only in the beginning of the story, I can really feel the heart in the story, and I can really feel all the care and thought that the author put in while crafting the story and the world and the characters. And especially Isabel, our main character, is already really resonating with me. She feels very relatable and real. She's clearly strong and clever and confident, but at the same time, she also has her own doubts that make her feel very relatable. You already see her struggling in the story with her own self-worth because of past trauma. And one of these moments of self-doubt that really resonated with me was after her best friend dies and she gets into a fight with another friend. She starts having all these doubts. And I'm just going to read that passage because it really resonated with me and it felt really powerful to me. So the passage reads, "He deserved more than that, more than you. You could have been there, been more, been better. If you listened, maybe he wouldn't have died. You pushed him away. You shut him out. You're a disaster. Who would ever want you? Not your father." And just that whole passage just felt so powerful to me. And like, that's only one example. There was also another example too of something like this in the book earlier that also felt really powerful. And I have another one of those passages right there, so I'm going to read this one too because this one I really related to as well. And it says, "Because if you're small, nobody cares. If you're staff, nobody cares. I was small and I was hurting, and this wasn't about me. It wasn't. But I was alone, so alone, and I just wanted someone to see me." So again, that's like right after her friend dies, and she's like struggling with all these feelings of self-doubt and self-worth and just hurt and sadness. So I'm really enjoying the writing of this book and also just the way Isabel's character is being formed and how relatable she is. Also, I must mention that one of the other members of Eric's scouting party is a man named Bjorn, and that just immediately made me think of A Fate Inked in Blood. And before this character was introduced, this book was already giving me Fate Inked in Blood vibes. And so this side character, he is like one of the only people right now who is actually being friendly and nice towards Isabel, and I have a feeling like he is going to become one of my favorite side characters in the book. So yeah, those are all my thoughts at the moment. Not too many because I'm only just getting into the book, but as I mentioned earlier, I am enjoying it and I'm excited to see where the story goes from here. So in addition to starting Illusion of Stars, I did start A Dawn of Onyx on audiobook. I am not very far in, I'm only on chapter 4, so I don't have many thoughts yet, but I am liking it so far. I am liking our main character, Arwen, who is 20 years old, and she's a healer, and I realized when I learned that out that all 3 main characters of the books I'm reading for this video are all healers. And I didn't plan that. That was just like total coincidence. So that's cool. And another thing that I can say that is that this author knows how to end her chapters on cliffhangers, because the first 2 chapters ended on the worst cliffhangers that just made you want to read the next chapter right away. So yeah, I'll give more thoughts and tell you more about this story after I listen to more of it, but I am liking it so far. Hi, so I'm back with an update on Illusion of Stars. I'm not done yet, but I only have an hour 20 left in the book. But I want to give another update before I finish because I've gotten to the point in the book where it's the climax, where all the crazy things are happening. There's been a rebellion, there's been a character death, there's been someone who's been poisoned with something that's not curable. There's been the introduction of these people who can wield fireballs, and they also drink blood. Some of our characters are in jail at the moment. And yeah, so it's just been kind of crazy. And then on the romance side of the story, it's still very much slow burning. And at this point in the story, it's clear that Isabel likes Eric and Eric likes Isabel, and it's clear that they know that the other likes the other, but they still haven't actually confessed their feelings to each other. There has been just some cute moments between the 2 of them, with them getting to know each other and with their relationship developing. Okay, so the main reason I wanted to give one more update before I finish this book is because I have a theory. And my theory, which I'm going to be very vague about so I don't give any spoilers by accident if my theory is correct. So my theory is that I don't think it was one of Eric and his people who killed Isabel's best friend. I think it's actually this other person, because I'm just getting like bad vibes about them. There seems something that's not quite right about them. And maybe I'm completely wrong, but those are just the vibes I'm getting right now. And in the same vein, I also feel like the king, that his mental illness, I feel like someone is poisoning him. And again, maybe I'm completely wrong, but he talks about how the Dark Devil is making him drink from this cup of stars. And everyone just writes that off as him being crazy, but I'm like, what if someone is poisoning him? And what if the king is trying to tell other people around him that he's being poisoned, but no one is believing him because they just think he's crazy? So that is my theory. I am going to go finish this book now, and I will be back with my final thoughts. That was cute. She goes to kiss him for the first time ever, and just really quickly, and he gets shocked, so she's like, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And she goes to like run away, and he catches her wrists and pulls her back and says, you are not allowed to kiss me, then awkwardly swim away. Like how chapter 41 just says, did you know puffins mate for life? And then you go to chapter 42. Which there was something earlier about the puffin thing, so it's like a throwback to earlier in the story. No! Oh! That was smart. I did not connect that dot that they just revealed. That makes a lot of sense. So I just ended a chapter, and there's 9 minutes left in the book, and the next chapter is titled Eric. That's the one thing I've been reading this book. The whole book has been from Isabel's point of view, but I was like, it'd be cool if we got Eric's point of view, and now we're getting that, so that's cool. Hi, so I'm back and I finished Illusion of Stars. Let's talk about my final thoughts and my thoughts on this book as a whole. So overall, I really enjoyed this. I feel like the beginning and the ending of this book were really strong. The beginning pulled me in right away, and the last 100 pages of this were super intense and powerful. And it did end on a cliffhanger, and the cliffhanger was kind of sad but also kind of hopeful. In the middle of the book was slower, but that gave time for characters and relationships to develop and form. And speaking of characters, I loved our main character, Isabel. I love that she wasn't physically strong, but she was strong in other ways. She is fiercely determined, never gives up, and uses her medical knowledge to her advantage. And I also just love just how generally kind and caring she is, even during like tough and bleak times. And I also really liked our main love interest, Eric. Yes, he is tough and broody, but he also has a soft side to him. And you can see a bit of that soft side when Isabel asks him what his favorite animal is. And he says his favorite animal is a puffin. And when he says that, Isabel is kind of in disbelief because she's like, puffins? I thought you'd say wolves or bears or something scary. And he says he likes puffins because puffins do a courtship dance when they reunite with their spouse. It's cute. And then Isabel replies, puffins don't get married. And then he says they mate for life, and that's better. It's true they separate for a few months out of the year to fish and feed, but they always find their way back to each other. And then they dance. And I just thought that was super cute. It just shows how he has a romantic side to him. And those two characters, Isabel and Eric, they did get the most character development out of everyone, but there were also some minor characters that I really liked as well, and I hope we get more of them in the second book as well. So this book was told from first person perspective from Isabel's point of view, and I kind of wish though that the book had dual perspectives through the entire things with Eric and Isabel, so we'd be able to read Eric's thoughts and see what he felt about Isabel since the beginning when they first met, because I have a feeling that he might have fell first for her. And we do get the last chapter of the book is from Eric's perspective, so that was awesome. I really like that. I just wish we had gotten more of that throughout the entirety of the book. And speaking of their romance, I really enjoyed their romance. It was definitely very slow burn. Like, they do not kiss until like almost the end of the book. And they just spend like a lot of the book teasing and bantering with each other, which was fun to read. And there was also like cute moments between them as well. However, my favorite thing about their relationship is that they help each other just realize their own self-worth and realize that they are enough as they are. And that, I think, is a very important message that is woven throughout the entire book that I think is very relatable and really resonated with me. Because I feel like we all have those times where like, oh, like we feel like we're not enough, that we're not doing enough, and that will never be enough. But this book really gets across the message that you are enough as you are, that you are not small, that you matter. So overall, I really enjoyed this. I'm giving it 4 stars, and I definitely recommend it if you're looking for a slow burn enemies to lovers romance. So next, I'm gonna start the Treasured one, and once I've read some of this, I'll come back with my first thoughts. Sorry, chapter 1, the first sentence says, when the world found out the Fae existed, everything went to shit. And that says, "Pardon my French." And look, another butterfly, but this time it's in the sun. Hi, so it's the next day, so it's now Sunday, and I do have a reading update on The Treasured One, which is that I finished this book already. So I read half of this yesterday, I finished it up this morning, so I have thoughts to share on this, but before I do that, I do have an Amazon package here that has a couple books in it, so I thought it'd be fun to do a little unboxing, so we're going to do that next. So there's 2 books in here, plus my dishwasher tablets that we don't care about. So we'll just take those out. And now for the books. So the first one is this one. So I end up ordering myself a copy of Quicksilver by Callie Hart. And I recently read this, and I loved it. I have a reading blog up if you're interested in that. So I ended up ordering myself a physical copy because I loved it so much. And I ended up getting the alternate cover because I like this one more than I like the regular cover. Here's the back of it. Oh, and on the inside, actually, here's the original cover. It's right there. So that's cool. And then you got the map. So that's that. And then the other book I have in here is A Dawn of Onyx. And so this is the one I'm listening to an audiobook right now, and I'm not that far in on my audiobook. I'm only on chapter 4 because I just haven't had a lot of time to listen to an audiobook. But since I just finished The Treasured One, I'm now going to focus all my attention on this book. So I wanted a copy of it so I could read it physically and also listen to it on audiobook while I'm doing like chores and stuff. And so those are 2 books I got. I'm excited to have both of these. And so now let's talk about The Treasured One. So The Treasured One takes place in a world where 24 years before the start of the story, a rift opens up between the modern human worlds and the Fury Realm. And along with the rift, certain individuals gained magic powers, and these individuals became known as Golden Children. And our main character, 22-year-old Avery, is one of these Golden Children. So when she was 8 years old, she developed healing powers. And then when she was 14, she was taken into custody by the government and moved to the White House in Washington, D.C., and she has lived there ever since. And they took her into custody because her parents just couldn't deal with her powers, because once people found out that she had healing powers, everyone wanted to use her powers for themselves. And when Avery first moved to the White House, there was another girl who lived there too named Marcia, and she also had powers. She had the powers to change her appearance at will. And so the 2 of them live in the White House. They pretty much live in luxury because they get whatever they want, with the only thing being that they are not allowed to leave the White House. So one day when they are 16, they decide that they're going to sneak out. And so they manage to sneak out, but then from there things go horribly wrong because Avery ends up being kidnapped. And the Secret Service ends up rescuing her, but they're never able to find her friend Marcia. And ever since that day, Avery has not left the White House because of that experience. And so she just lives at the White House and she does as she is told, and in turn the White House gives her protection. And so as part of her duty, she heals people that are dying from incurable diseases, and she does this once a month. And she can only heal a certain number of people at one time. And at the beginning of the book, she is having one of these healing sessions, but she can tell that something isn't right, that it's getting harder for her to use her power, and she's actually starting to feel sick. And so she manages to heal a baby, but then when she tries to heal another woman, she actually ends up fainting. And when she comes to, she learns that her organs are starting to break down, and her body is just starting to give out on her. And they run tests, but they don't really, know how to fix the problem. And so they end up reaching out to the Fae, and so the Fae end up agreeing to treat Avery, but with the condition that she has to come to the land of the Fae. And so she ends up going there, and she ends up meeting the 2 Fae princes, and it's actually a younger prince who ends up taking her under his wing and ends up agreeing to teach her how to use her magic. And so our story goes from there with her learning to use her magic and of course falling in love with the younger Fae prince. So now for my thoughts. So overall, I enjoyed this book. It was cute and it was a fast and easy read. It read very much like a slice of life book that took place in a fantasy world. There isn't a lot of action in this. Mostly it's just about Avery adjusting to life in the fairy world while also learning how to use her powers and forming a relationship with Prince Riel. I found the beginning of the book to be very engaging and intriguing. I found it interesting how the book takes place in an alternate modern setting America, and also the parts toward the end were very exciting. It was just like the middle of the story that dragged a little bit for me, and also the pacing of the story felt a little bit off to me as well. And similarly, while I found Avery and Riel's relationship to be really cute, it felt like the pacing of the relationship just fell off. I really liked how they met in the beginning and how you can kind of see how right off the bat they're kind of interested in each other, and how he is kind to her but also like teases her. I like that part of their dynamic in the beginning. And I also like how right in the beginning he gives her a nickname. He calls her a Searly, which he says is a small cute mammal that follows predators around and hides in the grass waiting to clean the bones of their prey. The predators do not mind them because they are too fast to chase and not worth eating. And when he tells her what an Asari is, she kind of looks at him in like confusion, and he clarifies by saying, "You remind me of one, small, cute, following others around. Their hair is similar color as well, like clouds at sunset." Which I just thought was really cute. I like that beginning part of their relationship, but then there's like kind of like a time skip. So like 1 month goes by really fast, and then 2 months go by really fast, and during this time, like we're told that the prince is teaching her magic, but we're not shown much of it, and we're shown like a tiny bit, but I would have liked to get like more of their friendship forming and then like their romance forming. And I feel like we don't get shown a lot of that. And then after that, I feel like it just jumps really fast into the romance, so I felt like a little bit of a disconnect because of that. And there was a steamy scene like really early on, and I just felt like I wasn't ready for that. And I did almost put the book down because of that. But I did continue on because I was interested in their relationship and I wanted to see how it was going to develop. And I do feel like after that, the relationship did get more developed as the story went on, and there was like more cute moments between them that I enjoyed reading. And there were a couple more steamy scenes as well. And those scenes felt better placed and more appropriate because at that point, I felt like we had gotten to see more of the relationship develop. I felt more of attachment to our main couple. And the romance part of the book was the reason why I kept reading, and that was definitely the strongest part of the book. And then in terms of characters in the book, Riel and Avery got the most character development, which makes sense because she's the main character and he's the love interest. But there was one side character that I really liked, and I think she's even like my favorite character in this entire book. And that is Luenki. She's a Fae ambassador to the US. So she acts as a go-between between the US and the fairy world. And she's the first fairy that Avery meets, and she's the one who escorts Avery to the Fae world. She's just such a sunshiny character, and she's always upbeat and positive, and she always has Avery's like best interests at mind, and she's just like a very nice character overall. And there's also like a scene that I really liked with her in it where she is providing a distraction for Avery and Riel to sneak away, and she ends up revealing that she knows how to play like a harp like instrument and can also sing. There was some world building, and there was also some mention of their magic system, and those got a little bit of development but not a whole lot. And I actually would have liked if we had gotten more of those, because for the magic system we do learn a little bit about the different types of magic, and we get to see our main character use her healing magic, which was a part of the book that I really enjoyed. But beyond that, we don't get to see much more of the magic in action in their world, so I would have liked to see more of that. And then along with that, we also get the sense that like there's some drama going on with a neighboring kingdom and a power struggle, and that plays a little bit more into more of the ending of the book and the climax of the book. But at the same time, it's not super developed, and it's more like kind of just like a backdrop to the main focus of the story, which is the romance between Riel and Avery. And I will say I liked the writing of the book. It was very straightforward, clear, and easy to read. And mostly the book was told from Avery's point of view and first-person perspective, but then you also got a couple chapters from Riel's perspective that I really appreciated. I like getting to see a look inside his mind and seeing the world through his eyes. And then also there was these chapters every so often in third person that kind of just showed us what was going on with the royal family and gave us like a little bit more about the world and what was going on. And that was kind of like where the world building came from, was from those chapters. And then everything was wrapped up nicely at the end. It was a happily ever after ending, and I liked the ending. It was cute and heartwarming. And there is supposed to be another book in the series, but I'm thinking since everything wrapped up really nicely in this one, that maybe the next book is going to be like one of those books where it takes place in the same world but follows a different character. But yeah, those are pretty much all my thoughts. Overall, I enjoyed this. I am giving it 3 stars because while I did enjoy it on a whole, there were some things that did take away from my enjoyment a little bit. So next, I am going to continue on with A Dawn of Onyx. So I'll be back when I have read more of this and have more thoughts about this. And I'm not sure how much more reading I'm going to do today because I'm going to go visit my parents for a little bit this afternoon. Though I do plan to listen to this on audiobook on my drive there and home, so I'll at least get a little bit of this read today. Hi, so it's a few days later, and I have a reading update for A Dawn of Onyx. I made it to chapter 16, page 210. So I am about halfway through this now, and so I wanted to share my thoughts about this book so far, but first let me tell you a little bit about what this is about. So our story follows 20-year-old Arwen. She works as a healer in her small village while also taking care of her sick mother and younger sister Lee. And she does have medical knowledge that she uses to treat people, but she also has magic powers, so she can also heal with a touch. And she talks about how, like, witches are common in their world, and there are witches that use healing spells, but her magic is different. It's not like that, and she doesn't really understand it. But she is not a witch, and her mother urges her to keep her powers a secret, so she does, but she still uses them to help her patients, but secretly, and the only people that know that she has these magic healing powers are her family. So 18 months before the start of the story, all the able-bodied men in Arwen's village were conscripted into the king's army because their kingdom, the kingdom of Amber, is currently at war with the kingdom of Onyx. And among those that were conscripted were her brother Ryder and her childhood friend Halden. Halden and Ryder had been sending letters to Arwen and her family, but it has been a year since they have received a letter from them. So Arwen knows that most likely they are dead, but she doesn't want to face that truth, so she is still holding out hope that they are alive. And then that night at dinner, Arwen's mother and her sister Lee are trying to convince Arwen to face that likely truth that her brother is dead, so then that they can grieve him and gain some closure. But when they're having that discussion, the door of their house opens and in walks none other than their brother. And so Ryder is in horrible shape. He is all beat up and one of his arms is twisted the wrong way, and he tells him that his and his convoy had engaged in battle with an Onyx battalion and they lost, but he managed to somehow get away. And when he left, he ended up taking a bag of Onyx gold that he found on the battlefield with him. Unfortunately, though, he has been followed by the Onyx soldiers because they want their money back. And since he was followed, he tells Arwen, his sister, and his mother that they need to leave their village and head to Garnet where it will be safer. So they end up agreeing to do that, and so they leave their village and they're on their way to Garnet when Arwen and Lee realize that they left their mother's medicine behind. So Arwen volunteers to go back and get the medicine because she's fast. But unfortunately, when she gets back to her house, a group of Onyx soldiers are already in their house. And so she ends up being captured, and they end up taking her back to one of the Onyx army strongholds, Shadowhold, and she ends up being thrown in the dungeons there. And the king of Onyx, King Ravenswood, ends up being at the keep at that time, and Arwen ends up making a deal with him that she will work as the prison healer at Shadowkeep as long as he will leave her family alone and not go after her brother for stealing money. And King's Ravenwood, Kane, is our love interest, and so our story goes from there. And so now for my thoughts. So far I am enjoying this, and actually chapter 15 I really enjoyed, so my enjoyment went up a level with that last chapter I just read, and I feel like from here things are going to be super exciting and really interesting. And then I also really like Arwen as our main character. So she has healing skills, like knowledge and magic powers, so that to me I feel like is a strength of hers, but she doesn't have like any physical skills at all. But that makes sense because she just grew up as a girl in a village, so she didn't really have any reason to have those skills. But in the story, there is someone who takes her under his wing and starts teaching her how to use a sword. So I really like how she is gonna learn those combat skills, but she doesn't have them quite yet. And I'm also very interested in learning more about her magic powers. So that's the other thing I'm finding very intriguing so far, is the magic system in this book. Because you get the mention of the witches, how there are witches, but usually it runs in the family. Witches, they have to say spells out loud to cast them, and they usually use grimoires, but Arwen's magic doesn't work like that. Like, she draws the magic from within her and doesn't have to say any spells. And I have a theory. And my theory is that I feel like Arwen is probably half fae, because we are told at the beginning of the story that we know who her mother is, but we don't know who her birth father is. And her brother and her sister are only her half-siblings. They have a different father. And at the beginning of the story, there was a mention of a character who had wings. So I'm like, she could be part fae. I also could be completely wrong, but that's the feeling I'm getting right now. So I'm really interested to learn more about her powers and to see where they go from here. Another character I'm liking so far is King Ravenswood, whose first name is Kane. And he's just a fun character so far. Really likes to push Arwen's buttons, and I'm really enjoying the banter between the two of them. And it's clear from the very beginning that he is drawn to her, and that almost makes me feel that maybe there's like some sort of fated mates or soulmates thing going on here, because it is already apparent that he will burn down the world for her. And it is very clear that this is going to be a slow burn romance and kind of an enemies to lovers, because Arwen knows of King's Ravenswood. Like, she's always heard like all these horrible things about him and how he's just like cruel and ruthless, but like she's slowly starting to see that that may not be the case. And so I'm really excited to see like where their romance goes from here. And I do have to say that this book is very much giving me from Blood and Ash vibes. King's Ravenwood is reminding me a little bit of Castile from here. And also Arwen is reminding me a little bit of Poppy too. And between all this, there's also like political drama and intrigue going on as well, and world building. And that has been interesting to read about so far too. And I find it interesting that all the kingdoms seem to be named after gemstones, because you have Onyx, Amber, and there's also mention of a kingdom named Opal as well. I'm wondering if there's a meaning behind those names. And so those are all my thoughts at the moment. Like I said, I'm enjoying it, and I have a feeling that the last 200 pages are going to be amazing and that a lot of things are going to happen. So I can't wait to read more of this. Hi, so it is the next day, and I do have a reading update. I read 100 more pages of this yesterday. So I am on chapter 24, page 304. And those last 100 pages were so good. I'm at the point where I am loving this book. And so many exciting things happened in those last 100 pages. Also, a romance heated up, which I really loved. I just love Kane and Arwen so much and their whole dynamic together. And there was something that Kane said to Arwen at the end of the last chapter that just made my heart so happy. And so I just want to read that little passage. And there's no spoilers in this, so I'm going to read that now. So Kane says to Arwen, "You showed extraordinary bravery when you had no hope it would save you. Whether you know it or not, Arwen, there is a wild strength inside of you. You don't need Ryder or Dagon or me or anyone else to take care of you. Remember that. You are enough." And I love that so much. So I have a little bit over 100 more pages to go, so I'm going to try to finish this morning before I have to go to work this afternoon. And I think I should have enough time to finish it before I have to leave. So I'm going to hop back into this now and get reading. I love Mari so much. Mari is Arwen's friend that she makes when she's at Shadowforge. And she's just, Mari's like a bookworm and she's a witch. And she just talks a lot and she's always like sunshiny and she's just an awesome side character in this book. And she's one of my favorite side characters in this book. Oh my gosh. Griffin. Okay, so Griffin is the king's commander and his right-hand man, and he's usually a grump. But he says to Mari, he's like, your hair is radiant, like sunshine after a storm, like out of the blue. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, it'd be super cute if there was a little romance between Mari and Griffin, because I also really like Griffin too as a side character. That chapter was just so wholesome. I did not see that coming at all. Hi, so I have finished A Dawn of Onyx, so I am here with my final thoughts on this. So I end up loving this. The last 200 pages were really what made me go from really enjoying it to loving it, and I had a feeling that the last 200 pages were going to do that, and I was right. And in those last 200 pages, everything really came together really well. The romance really blossomed, which that was my favorite part of this book, was the slow burn romance between Arwen and Cain. And we finally learned the truth about Arwen's powers, and we learned more finally about the Fae. So I don't think I mentioned this in my earlier updates, which up to this point, they have really felt like a fairy tale, because in this world, they're just like shrouded in mystery. And no one really knows much about them, and the same goes for Arwen. She's only heard like bits and pieces about them over the course of her life. And so we finally get to learn about them in the last 200 pages, and I really enjoyed that. And then there was also some edge-of-your-seat explosive action that happened, and there were some very happy things that happened near the end, and also some very sad things as well. And this ended on a bittersweet note. Although the ending wasn't really much of a cliffhanger, we do get the revelation of some things that do cause some conflict, and mostly it throws a big wrench in the romance between Arwen and Cain. So I knew something was going to happen because this is the first book in a trilogy, so they can't be happy at the end of book 1 because then their romance would just become boring in books 2 and 3. And so that thing did happen, and that was the only thing that kind of annoyed me a little bit, is what ends up happening, but at the same time, I understand why it had to happen, so that's just, like, a small complaint that I had. But otherwise, I really loved, like, the last 200 pages of this book. And so I mentioned that the romance was my favorite part of this book, but my second favorite part was the characters. So I loved Arwen and Cain, just their whole dynamic, their banter, and their slow burn romance. But also, there were some great side characters in here as well. I especially loved Mari, Dagon, Griffin, and Barney. And in addition, I also found the world building in this book to be very fascinating as well. I liked how all the different kingdoms were named after gemstones, though I wish like there was more of a reason behind that. Like, there doesn't seem like there's a reason behind it. But I think it sounds cool, but I would have liked it if, say, maybe it was called Onyx because maybe they just had a lot of onyx stones there or something. I don't know. But that's just really a small complaint, and that's just me nitpicking. I still, like, really enjoyed the world building anyways. And I do really like that we do get a glimpse at the different kingdoms in this book. So we get a glimpse into the Amber Kingdom because that's where Arwen is living at the beginning of the book. And then we also get to take a look at Onyx, although we only really do get a look at Shadowfold and the surrounding woods because that's where she is taken. So I would have liked to see more of the Onyx Kingdom, but again, that's just a small little nitpick. And towards the end, we also get to see the kingdom at Peridot as well, and that one has very much like tropical island vibes that I really liked. I also want to mention that I started listening to this on audiobook, so I listened to the first 4 chapters, and I was liking the audiobook, but I'm just more of a physical reader, so once I started physically reading this, I just ended up physically reading it all the way through. And I will say that when I first started physically reading this, the writing style did throw me off a little bit. It just didn't 100% flow smoothly, and that bothered me a little bit when I first started reading this physically. But I feel like by the end of this book, I had adapted to the writing style and it didn't bother me anymore. So overall, I love this book, 5 stars. I'll definitely be reading the next book, which is actually already out, and that one is A Promise of Peridot. And then the third one, A Reign of Rose, comes out this October, so that's also really soon. So now that I have finished this book, I'm going to wrap up this video because this is the last book I want to read for this vlog. So I'm just going to quickly go over the 3 books that I read. So this one I just talked about, so I'm not going to say much more about it, but it was 5 stars. I recommend it if you're looking for a slow burn fantasy romance with enemies to lovers vibes and that has interesting world building. And also if you are a fan of the From Blood and Ash series, because this reminded me of that one a lot. And then the first book I read in this video was Illusion of Stars by Sarah Marie Page. This one was also a slow burn enemies to lovers romance, and I feel like my favorite thing about this one was just the writing style, because now that I keep, like, when I think back about it, I just think about how much I really like the writing style of this author. So her writing reminded me a little bit of Stephanie Garber's writing, in that it's like more on the lyrical side, and I just really liked the writing style in here. And I also thought that this book had a very powerful message as well, and this is the first book in a series. It does end on a cliffhanger, so I am excited to read the second one. And so this one I gave 4 stars. And then the last book that I read in this video was The Treasured One by Hannah Levin, and this one is a mentor to friends to lovers romance. And this one I gave 3 stars. I enjoyed it, but there were a few things that took away from my enjoyment a bit. One of them being the romance just happened really fast, like it went from 0 to 100 really fast. And I did think it was really cute, so once I got past that part of it happening really fast, there was some really cute moments and scenes. And I feel like this is a good book if you're just looking for a book where you can switch off your brain and a book that just feels like a warm hug and that is just like fluffy and cute. Then I would recommend this one, because the main focus of this is the romance, and that's the thing that gets the most development. And there is some like plot stuff going on, but that's very much like just kind of in the background and it's not like super developed. So definitely don't read this if you're looking for a fantasy romance with an amazing plot, because you won't find that here. But this is a really cute, fluffy romance, so if that's what you're looking for, then I would check this out. So those are all 3 of the books I read in this video. If you have read any of these, let me know down below what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!